genuinely, and this will probably piss people off, but genuinely, I grew to hate skating. Like I got to a point in like after like 2004 ish that, and it was my own fault. Like it's nobody's fault but my own. I started to get, I had picked up some corporate sponsors and started to get paid decently, and it got to the point where I went from spending my entire life putting my skates on because I wanted to have them on and I wanted to do something on them, to being told to put my skates on and being told this is what they want me to do with my skates on. And
Right.
it wasn't even an extreme form of that. It's not like anybody was telling me like do this or you're fired or anything like that. But having that obligation tied to it just sucked the joy out of it. And it's hard. I struggle with it. I there's the side of it that, man, the opportunities that I had and a lot of us had in the late '90s, early 2000s to travel and make some money. Like I wouldn't take that back for a second. It was, the reality is it was freaking amazing. It was great. It was such an insane life experience. But it did. It ended up for a while there sucking the joy out of it. And it wasn't until I saw my son that on a ramp that it reconnected it for me. It made me like instantly feel that joy again of just to roll around. Like it, it was something I missed. So it was good to be back.
Hmm.
Yeah, you can definitely forget those things. Like when the pure joy of when you start skating, like what it is to just like enjoy being able to roll around and have that experience, the excitement behind it. And then like if you have the opportunity to go pro and you become a pro, it brings all these other factors in that make it less enjoyable because it's not purely about the fun. You're having obligations, you're having to do this. And although it's like, and I can relate to that as like a former pro skater. So like having like, it's like you said, it's a privilege of an experience, but it also like brings all these other elements into the equation where it's like, oh, that's not really particularly. I'm losing the joy for it, or like the simple joy for it. It's
Right.
cool to hear that you found it back because I definitely know people that have been resentful of skating. Like, I hate this. I want to separate myself from what that brings, and they haven't been able to like rediscover the joy. But it's cool to hear that through your children that you're able to find that again.
Hmm.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. And it was such a huge life lesson too, because when I when I got into Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and MMA and started fighting, man, I didn't make the same mistakes. I did not. I know now. Obviously, I'm a lot older and I have a lot more experience. Like, man, making money is not difficult. If anyone out there is listening and they're complaining that it's hard to make money, you're just not working. Like, it's pretty easy to go out there and make a living if you're willing to do some work. So when it came to fighting and stuff like that, I never felt like, oh, I got to get all these sponsors. I need to make sure that people are paying me for this and that. And I didn't take any sponsors. I got a lot of offers. I ended up taking an equipment sponsor who just agreed to give me a bunch of free training gear so that I can get ready for fights, which I was fine with. I used their gear anyway, so they just sent me some free stuff. But I never, not one time ever in fighting or jujitsu did I ever have somebody. I'm trying to remember because that might be a lie. Maybe someone did pay me once. I don't remember, but it was never a thing of mine. Like I did not want that to ever happen to me again. So I did learn from it, and because of that, I have now, man, I've trained MMA and jujitsu since basically, I mean, I wrestled my whole life, but doing like this stuff since 2002, so 20 something years now, and I went and trained yesterday. And I loved every second of it.
That's
It's
awesome that you were
awesome.
able to like learn from skating to make your next stage in life that much better. Like the MMA, you learn from that, and now that could have been a completely different thing. You could have got tired of MMA after like 5 years for the same thing as skating did. And you speak the truth too, because a lot of other, I don't know, a lot of our viewers might not know that, but some pros in the past have said something similar to that, where they do get jaded by it. And when it comes to the sponsor stuff, you're from a foreign generation of skaters where nowadays we can't picture like corporate sponsors having to be on like ASA tours, X Games tours, uh, traveling for, you know, like I said, doing shows and stuff like that. Like, that's not so common these days. Being a pro skater now is so much more laid back. Granted, there's not as much money in it, but I'm sure there's like a healthy balance of some sort that we all need to figure out to learn that where we can make skating and be pro skaters as a living, but be able to enjoy it still because that's why we do it all in the first place, you know?
Right. Man, I'll be honest with you though, that like I still follow it a ton. I watch the podcast religiously. I follow all of my favorite skaters, and it absolutely kills me that that some of these guys are not just getting freaking paid like Michael Jordan type money, because the stuff that's being done right now compared, and obviously the equipment's changed, and the stuff you can use to get better has changed. But man, um, I watch some of these people's clips, and it like my jaw drops. It's just absolutely insane what's being done on a pair of skates nowadays. I mean, I always wished I could. One of my biggest regrets is I wish I could go back and articulate better why I skated, because I was different than other people. And you know, there's guys like Eric Burke and Nick Regal and Dominic Sagona and Arlo and Josh Petty and all of these guys that are truly, and you could see it in their later lives. Like, look at what every one of those people became after skating, and every one of them is an artist. When they would put skates on, everything they did on a pair of skates was an expression of art to them. And to me, that wasn't the case. Like and a lot, most people would disagree with me, man. I don't give a fuck. Most people would disagree and say that I'm doing it wrong, but I don't care. And I wish I could go back to being younger and articulate it better, but I never cared what I looked like skating. What I cared about was what it felt like. Like as a kid in the 80s, to be able to to be able to attach wheels to my body so that I could go places faster, and like I felt like I was becoming like a form of Batman, or some bionic version of myself, where I now had superpowers and I could like fly around Brooklyn and get to the park faster and bomb these hills in New Jersey. Like, to me, everything I did on skates was always revolved around the way it felt to do it. Like when I did a grind, like a true spin Mizu to me is uh, probably my favorite trick to do. Not because it's pretty, not because it looks good, but because of the way it feels to spin into it and to lock it on, and how you can spin off of it. Like, to me, I don't give a shit what it looks like. Like I love the way that trick feels. And when I see people skate, there are certain people that I watch that when I see them skate, it's not that I'm appreciating the artistic value of the way they skate. Like I watched John Ortiz do a man, he charged, and it was like this little 2 foot ledge, but he was charging at it like full speed, and he jumped up, just did a top acid on top of this 2 foot high ledge, and it was like there was almost no impact when he landed. It was like he floated onto the ledge. He went so fast and probably slid 20, 30 feet. Like, it was just, he was hauling, and then he came off super smooth and landed perfect. And to me, when I watched it, I'm like, man, that looks like it felt like super friggin' cool. Like, just flying like that and floating. And that's one of the reasons that vert became so attractive, because you literally, when you start getting onto a good ramp that has a high roll in, and you can get, and I was never able to air like Sessa or Aton or you know, Chris or Rafael Santos. Like, some of those guys, man, they'd go like, and forget about the Yasutoko brothers. Those guys are absolutely insane. Um, but you know, I was never able to go 10, 12 feet above the ramp. But even getting head high, when you ride up a half pipe and you get overhead high on a half pipe, man, you feel like you're flying. Like, it literally feels like that weightlessness, and it's not like, oh, I'm an adrenaline junkie, I want to feel this adrenaline. Like, it was nothing about that at all. It was just that feeling of like weightlessness and flying. Like, man, I just loved it. And I watch skaters now, and there's guys like Demetrius George who, uh, dude, the things that I'm watching them do are just bananas. Like, it's crazy.